Hello, everybody. In this episode, I'm very pleased to have a young professor. He's a professor of public policy at one of India's leading universities. Right now, we have with us Naveen Thomas. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Naveen.
Thank you, Professor Mathur, for inviting me here. As Professor Mathur just mentioned, I'm Naveen Joseph Thomas, and I'm an associate professor and the associate dean for program strategy and academic affairs at the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy at the P Jindal Global University. So I'm an economist by training, and I've had a fairly long, winding journey to be where I am now. And most of my research looks at issues of empirical industrial organization, issues of the small and medium enterprises, family economics, and growth theory. So these are my broad areas. These are areas which I've worked on through my PhD as well as I'm working on right now. So a little bit about where I started. I started with as a student in school, I knew very little about economics. I had physics, chemistry, mathematics, and computer science, and almost no background in economics. Then, for my undergraduate studies, I did an undergraduate degree in physics. Again, no economics. I did a whole lot of math. Obviously, the loads of physics, and I enjoyed physics quite a bit, be it quantum mechanics or mechanics. It was, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed physics. Roughly around the mid of my undergraduate degree, and that's, I think, when most undergraduate students really
Hmm,
take a call on what direction to take.
hmm,
I figured that, well, I don't want to probably end up in a lab working on experiments, and at that time, theoretical physics did not interest me much. I was more of an empirical physics physicist. I mean, I felt that that would be my calling, but I didn't see myself doing that sort of research, being in a lab. And I was fairly convinced that I couldn't teach to save my life. Well, I was very, very convinced. So obviously, I mean, it didn't make sense for me to continue on that journey. And well, at that time, I got interested in finance, and well, I thought that, well, this is what I want to do. So I took a slight detour, and at the end of my undergraduate degree, I happened to get placed in a firm which was engaged in proprietary trading, and I joined as a derivatives analyst in the currency derivative segment. And that was a very interesting journey. I loved the job that I did. I found it extremely interesting. And sometimes I felt that it felt like playing a video game to earn a living. Right. So I just thoroughly enjoyed that. And I had a great trading partner. So some of these spreads that we did often required us to work in three markets simultaneously. And since it was our early years, we traded in pairs. And both of us had really complementary trading styles. So we stuck on longer than almost, well, we stuck on as a trading pair till the time I left, while most others usually broke off sooner. But in any case, that was a fantastic journey. And while I was there, I was fascinated about how these markets work. And that's where my interest in economics started. And I asked a couple of my colleagues, who some of them had their MBAs in finance and some of them were economists themselves, on what to sort of read to get more insights on this. And somebody suggested this book, Don Bush Fisher. They said that, why don't you read this book? And I went through that. I had data coming in from Bloomberg, and I think I ran a simple equation, and it seemed to be quite close. And I was like, oh wow, I found the next thing I want to do. This pretty much explains everything. Well, that's how, I mean, that's some irrational exuberance, I suppose. And when it was, I worked in that role for a year, and well, my I was 21, and my parents were also sort of pushing me to get the next degree. And I had these two paths: go back to physics and shift over to economics. And well, I took the plunge, and I decided to take economics, although I had almost little or no background in economics till that point. except for a little bit of microeconomics that I'd read myself, and a little bit of the Don Bush Fisher macroeconomics. So, well, I started my journey in economics, and I think this is where economics stands out. It's so welcoming to people with zero background in economics, to the extent that I sometimes wondered what people did in their undergrad because it didn't seem to affect my master's journey that much. But I also had some very phenomenal teachers who understood the background that I came from. And I think one of the challenges when you come from pure sciences background is that you almost forget how to write in length. And I was quite terse by most standards of physicists as well because I started writing in symbols because I just felt that writing in words was far too inefficient. So that was my master's journey, and I thoroughly enjoyed coming back to studies. And I think sometimes it's important to take a break between your degrees to just get a new perspective, and that helps you come back with a lot more vigor. And right after my master's, I joined my PhD in economics at the Delhi School of Economics, and I was there for about 6.5 years, did my PhD, and I also started teaching while I was doing my PhD. So I could teach in Delhi University, and I was at the Jesus and Mary College from 2013 to 2020. I taught there for a little bit more than 7 years before moving to the P Jindal Global University. So that's been almost most of my journey of where I started and what I started with, and the sort of journey that I've gone through to be an economist and working on issues which now are quite different from the issues that I worked on
Hmm.
as a PhD scholar. So,
Hmm.
as a PhD scholar, I worked on mostly theoretical issues.
Hmm.
All of my PhD is
Hmm.
uh, pure theory work,
Hmm.
and most of the research that I do now
Hmm.
is pure empirical work.
Hmm.
Right, so that's been quite a bit of a transition and as well. And I think over the last couple of years, I've had some really phenomenal mentors
Hmm.
who've really, really helped me become a better person as well
Hmm.
and a better researcher as I've traversed this journey.
Hmm.
So most of the work that I do right now, as I was saying, is basically on empirical industrial organization.
Hmm.
And I think this is one of the things that I really wanted to work on right as a master's student when I was doing Indian economy.
Hmm.
Um, and that's one thing that I really wanted to work on. And now I've sort of come back. I have the theoretical foundations. Now I'm working on these empirical issues. And all through the perspective I've taken, even during my PhD journey, is that, well, I want to work on issues, right? The economics that I do should matter, right? So I understand that you can also work on issues for the for creating or expanding the literature and the pool of knowledge. But yeah, I mean, I perfectly understand that perspective. But for me, the economics that I do and the work and each and every moment that I work on research should matter somewhere, or should matter to someone.
Hmm.
So during my PhD, I worked on issues of the MSME sector and how they act as a ladder for industrial and structural transformation in the economy.
Hmm.
Then I worked on a completely different issue on
Hmm.
the low female labor force participation of women
Hmm.
and how there are inefficiencies within the household and there's a bargaining failure within the household in patriarchal societies which prevents women from working under certain conditions. And those sort of conditions are replicated in India.
Hmm.
And then one other paper that I worked on during my PhD is how we often argue that women often stay away from the labor force for the betterment of their next generation because this is a time when human capital matters a lot. And
Yeah.
especially well educated women have
Hmm.
a higher productivity within the household because, well, they
Hmm.
can help with that knowledge, with that human capital formation for their children.
Hmm.
But I also show that, well, this cycle of women having a worse welfare doesn't end, it sort of perpetuates.
Hmm.
It's not just for one generation that they have to take a hit, it becomes an intergenerational problem.
Hmm.
Well, the math was all complicated, but at least the results are fairly intuitive.
mm,
Now, most of the work that I do right now, so I'm working on one paper with um, uh, two other researchers. One is Arvind Subramaniam and Abhishek Anand.
mm,
We're working on the multi-plant phenomenon in India. So we sort of argue that, well, the way in which a lot of industrial development is happening, it's sort of splintered, and that's particularly true for larger enterprises.
mm,
And that matters because uh, there are um, there are inefficiencies that come with this sort of horizontal growth rather than vertical growth, where you have larger factories
mhm,
and you scale economies. When you sort of grow horizontally with multiple factories, you, although as a firm you're hiring a fairly large number of workers,
mm,
these small factories don't have that scale, and then this affects our competitiveness,
mm,
our efficiency and competitiveness, especially when we are trying to export our products. So that's one of the works, and
mm,
there's another piece of research that I'm actively working on with
mm,
Simon Commander, Saul Estrin, and Varun Linganeni. Varun was my one of my students earlier. So that is on well, liberalization, concentration, and diversification. So we look at how competition in India has shaped, market competition in India has shaped over the last 20 years,
mm,
and what is the role that these
mm.
big business, and in the Indian case, these will be big family businesses.
Yeah.
So we analyze the top 25 family businesses. Some of
Mm,
them are family businesses, some of them are just big
mm,
businesses,
mm,
and sort of see what is the role that they've played. And what we broadly find is that in India, we've seen a general reduction in concentration, or the markets have become broadly competitive.
mm,
But there are certain pockets of high concentration,
mm,
and these pockets of high concentration are associated with increasing, well, markups that these big businesses can enjoy.
mm,
So there is a slight reversal in the trend last 5 odd years
mm.
in concentration, but that's fairly minor. But the broad trend has been declining, concentration and increased competition. But these big businesses are sort of cornering some sectors where they have a dominant position,
Mm.
and that's associated with increasing markups that they enjoy. So that's another bit of work that I'm doing. Abhishek and I have also been working, and we go back quite a bit. We studied together in when we were undergraduate students. We were room neighbors, and we continue to work together on
Mm,
several
mm,
research issues.
nice.
So we're also working on what didn't work for the
Mm,
textile and apparel sector in
mm,
India.
mm.
And we started off, I mean, we had complete dominance about 3 centuries back. I mean,
Yeah.
even at the time of independence, we were going quite strong. But then, since then, it's been quite downhill.
Mm,
And well, I mean, countries with like Bangladesh, who were nowhere close to where we were,
yeah.
have overtaken us, and even
Yeah.
more recently, Vietnam has completely overtaken us.
Right.
And what we argue is that there have been problems in the policies over the last decade or more.
Mm,
Some of them were reversed recently,
mm,
but well, there have been other policies which have trumped that. So we're back to square one. We were doing better. We were doing well after the multi-fiber agreement was removed or
yeah.
revoked.
Yeah.
But I think somewhere around 2010-11, things started going south for us. Bangladesh overtook us. Vietnam overtook us.
Yeah.
And some of that has to do with the way in which our fiber segment has shaped. We are still very cotton based, whereas the international markets are more synthetic fiber based.
Mm,
And problem with the synthetic fiber segment in India is that up top at the fiber level of the value chain, we are extremely concentrated.
yeah.
So be it a polyester or be it viscose staple fiber. We are
Mhm.
extremely concentrated,
Mm,
and that affects the competitiveness of downstream industries, be
mm,
it spinning, weaving,
mm,
processing, or apparel for that matter.
mm.
Right? So there are these cascading effects, and the high concentration. There were some corrections post 2020, but now there are non-tariff barriers which have trumped them. There are strong groups at play,
Yeah,
and I think some coherent policy stance needs to be taken to resolve these issues, because we're still losing ground in terms of our
yeah,
export of apparel as well as textiles. Sometimes we see reports that, the crisis in Bangladesh would probably come to our benefit, but the problem is that there's Vietnam there as well, is far more competitive. So we may not actually gain as much as we
yeah,
think we would. Right?
yeah.
So competitiveness is key. Investment and competitiveness is key, which is mostly lacking.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think those are some of the issues that are
Well,
preventing.
I do follow the Bangladesh, Vietnam, or the fibers. I people who think that the problems in Bangladesh will help India is just dreaming. Okay, the
Yeah,
problems in Bangladesh are political governance and so on, but the nobody is going to touch and destroy that segment of the economy. No one is interested in that. It's too much of a revenue earner and too much of a job creator. The problem is, I think part of the problem in Bangladesh is that they hire only young women in the ready-made garment sector. They are basically rural young women, which is a great liberation for young women because they become independent, but they don't hire men. The boys
mm,
are left without jobs. So when you see the growth, it's the only female-based growth country, and the boys are still not there in software and other things. So much of the protest is about that. I doubt that there'll be any loss to the export sector in Bangladesh, and we really did lose it. There's no question about it. It's not inherent in something else, and as for I mean, not everybody listening or here knows what the multi-fiber agreement is or when it ended. But let me just say in short that Bangladesh got its opportunities
yeah.
when it was included after an international agreement came to an end and the markets opened up. Bangladesh jumped in, took full advantage. China
No, in
also
fact,
jumped in. China
no, no.
also jumped in.
Yeah,
And
but in fact, Bangladesh was exempted from the multi-fiber agreement all through. That gave it some protection to grow. But one would have expected that after the multi-fiber agreement was withdrawn in 2005, it was completely withdrawn in 2005. It was a phased process, but the last of the barriers came off in 2005. We would have expected countries like India to really sort of
yeah,
catapult themselves.
but it didn't. And
Again,
China, which was not part of that open trade, jumped in and it was threatening everybody. But in the end, as you rightly said, Vietnam is also there and China, Bangladesh is there. And when you go out in the US to buy clothes, you do see some made in India, but you see many more Bangladesh and Vietnam. So, yeah, okay, good. But thank you very much for that. Uh, just one question. How does it all link to public policy? Why are you in the School of Public Policy? This sounds like you should be in the School of Economics because how does that square?
Yeah, so I enjoy quoting my dean on this. He says that, if economics could solve all the problems, you wouldn't need public policy. Uh, yeah, I mean, in terms of why the School of Public Policy, I think this is the school that reminds me that the economics that I do should matter,
Yeah,
and it should have some impact on public policy and the lives of the people that
yeah,
policies govern.
yeah,
And economics in itself cannot solve these issues, and that's, I think, as soon as you do something real,
yeah,
and or you're trying to affect real lives, you suddenly realize that it's not economics. There's something to do with politics and
mm,
the way in which societies are structured. And
yeah,
you cannot think of economics as being separate. And the
mm,
economic that works in the US cannot work in India because the politics and society is different.
mm,
It's the context matters.
mm,
And I think this is what public policy reminds you.
mm,
And I think a lot of the shift in the sort of work that I did happened once I came to the School of Government and Public Policy at P Jindal. So that sort of changed the perspective of economics
okay.
for me.
So let me ask you a standard question. What are your tips for young people? You have many students. You've taught many years now, first 7 years in Delhi University, and now 5 years, I guess, 4 or 5 years here. So, what are your tips for young people who may not be of the same quality or level of education as Jindal or even Delhi University? What tips do you have for young people?
Yeah, I think the single most important tip that I have to give to anyone is that, well, there's no replacement for hard work and perseverance.
Hmm,
Uh, and well, I don't consider myself as, I mean, I was never a topper ever,
hmm,
right? And but I think I do consider myself as somebody who's very hardworking and
hmm,
persevering.
hmm,
And there are always returns to the hard work that you do
hmm,
because a little bit every day continuously can
hmm,
sum up to quite a bit,
hmm,
right? And I think that's the primary suggestion that I have to give to anybody
hmm,
who's trying to figure out their way.
hmm,
Uh, just focus
hmm,
and work hard. There's no
hmm,
replacement for that.
hmm, hmm,
And well, it can help mitigate some of the other
hmm,
disadvantages if you're not super bright. Well, if you work hard enough, you can mitigate some
hmm,
of that. And
hmm,
so I think that is the primary objective.
hmm.
I mean, primary suggestion that I have to give to young
Okay.
people.
All right. No. Wonderful. I agree with what you have said, so I'm not really going to discuss it. I don't discuss, but anything else you want to add here about, we didn't hear your personal side, what is it that drives you outside of work? What kind of things do you see, enjoy, so just a little bit personal, perhaps.
Yeah, so I think if I look at my life right now, there are three aspects to this. So one is, four aspects, obviously. But so I've got my family life, I've got my work at Jindal, which has aspects of administrative work as well as teaching and research. So that's the work side. And in terms of family life, I'm married to an economist, and I think that makes a very interesting union because we're always pushing each other to do more and to do better.
Hmm.
So I think that's there. And I have a young son. He's what, 17 months now. And he was just while I was coming in, he was banging at the door. He didn't like the fact that I shut the door on him. Yeah, so but yeah, but the other thing is that, well, we stay with my parents,
Yeah.
and both my wife and I mean, we're very serious about our research, about our
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And the fact that we stay with our parents helps us manage our really tough schedules
Yeah.
with our parenting as well as time with our family,
Yeah.
with my parents.
Yeah.
And my son has a ball of a time. So
Yeah.
he has putting grandparents. He's always got company,
Yeah.
and my wife's parents are also in Delhi.
Yeah.
So that means that he's got a lot of love, and he's
Yeah.
uh, yeah. We're just worried that he might just be end up being a pampered little kid. Yeah, but we'll fix that later. So that's mostly
All right, great. That's wonderful to hear. We have a granddaughter who's slightly older, and my daughter lives fairly close to us, 15 minutes by car in Washington. So I understand what your grandparents are enjoying. Whether you are enjoying it is different, but
yeah. So I mean,
certainly they get the benefit of parenting at a moment's notice. Can we drop her off for 3 hours? Yes, of course, please do it. So it's a good way to have this grandparenting along with parenting.
Yeah, so I was telling my wife that, well, this is exactly the retirement that I see for myself.
Right.
My son has children. I would want to look after them, do a little bit of research,
Yeah.
and that's my
Uh,
dream retirement plan.
but you do live in Sonipat, no? So it is a bit isolated.
No, I actually stay in Gurgaon.
Oh, you stay in
I
Gurgaon. So how
travel.
long is the commute to class?
So that's on a good day, it's about an hour and a half.
Ah,
On a bad day, well, I mean, it comes to about 2.5 hours.
hmm,
Do I well, travel in India is sometimes vague. Some odd days that will be probably once in 2 years, you might be stuck for longer. But
okay,
I think that's more or less. But I don't go to the university every day.
okay.
Uh, so usually it's about 3 times a week,
Hmm.
rare times. So that sort of makes the travel more manageable.
Okay, okay. All right. So yeah, all right, fine. Uh, long distance commute.
It's
Not
a
every
long,
day. No, not
yeah, but,
every day. But
yeah, but
I
usually
guess
when I'm,
I
yeah,
guess
usually
you are not totally wasting your time in the car. You must have found some way to use that time. So what's that secret? What do you do in the car that's productive? Or you're just fighting the traffic?
no, no, no. I think I have a fairly nice journey. I mean, I use an expressway which is usually clear. So, I think when you're driving so often, the effort of driving is just, I mean, you're not really
Right,
very
you're right.
active, right?
No, no, no.
Not usually thinking, and
Yeah,
you're planning ahead on
yeah.
when I'm traveling to the university, I'm planning
Hmm,
ahead on what are the things that I need to do.
hmm,
uh, if there are certain issues, how is the best way to resolve this? So a lot of that planning happens when I'm traveling.
hmm,
um, and I don't think that takes too much away from the
hmm,
focus on driving. And
hmm,
sometimes when the network is bad, I try and catch up with people.
hmm.
Some of my usual buddies, I give them a call. I mean, obviously, it's not the best sound quality,
Yeah,
but
obviously. Yeah,
yeah, but I think it's still better because once you're back home with a young kid,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
uh,
You have no time. Their time
I,
sinks. They can take all your 24 hours.
yeah. So I usually try and call up my sisters. I have two sisters.
Yeah,
They're not in the NCR, so I try and call them up, stay connected. So that's what I do. It's
yeah.
usually planning about work, thinking about my research,
Hmm.
or just catching up with people.
Okay. Any new recent research idea that has not yet become full blown, but is a germ in your mind somewhere along this commute?
Well, I mean, well, I haven't started anything new yet, but anything I've thought about, I'm already working on.
Okay, all
Uh,
right. All right, okay, fine. Good. Okay,
I,
anything
I,
else you want to add here, or is there anything else you want to add here?
No, I think for young economists who are planning a career in economics, I think one of the most important things that you need is you definitely need firm foundations in theory, and that journey is great. It's important, but I think uh, the economics that you finally do, uh, if it matters, it's far more fulfilling.
Yeah.
Um, Far more fulfilling when you know that the economics that you're doing matters to, let's say, an
Mm,
industry association, and
mm,
when you have a conversation with them,
mm,
you can connect.
mm,
And sometimes you'll realize that the economics that you do is far more real than what you believe it is.
mm, mm,
Because this doesn't need to be taught in textbooks. People
mm,
live this. It's real.
mm, mm,
Right. So when you start connecting to economics at that level, it becomes far more rewarding. And I've personally felt this that it's extremely rewarding working with people on the ground,
mm,
working with industry associations. I mean, I
mm,
sometimes have to speak to people in the industry associations, be it smaller ones or
mm,
the larger ones. It's really fascinating because
mm,
it's as if all this economics that you're doing, they already know, they're living it. They're living that, and you're just trying to fit some of the theories that you know, or the data techniques that you know, to sort of uh, 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 put their story into, or breathe academic life into their story. I think that's interesting. That's the connect that I feel makes being an economist a lot more rewarding. Knowing that the economics that you do matters, and it's real.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Anything else you want to add here?
No, I think
Okay. All right. Good. I think we are on the same page. Let's end it here and say goodbye. I'll be back with another young person or an expert soon. Till then, bye, everybody. I want to talk to you offline quite a bit, so keep on, please. Okay.